Homes up in flames, entire neighborhoods evacuated tonight. A fast-moving California wildfire is burning out of control. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. That's some breaking news tonight. A wildfire emergency here in Southern California with new hotspots flaring up in just the last few hours, leading to Governor Gavin Newsom declaring a state of emergency. The flames are being fueled by intense winds across L.A. and Ventura counties. Those wind gusts have topped 60 miles an hour, and there is very little humidity, making any wildfire a potential catastrophe. The largest burning right now is a mountain fire that's about 50 miles northwest of Los Angeles near Camarillo. And since yesterday, it has grown to 20,000 acres with zero containment. Thousands of people have been evacuated and have lost power there, and dozens of buildings have been destroyed. Our colleagues at NBC LA captured some of the destruction.
We are seeing dozens of properties that look just like this one behind me, completely destroyed.
Look at that, and then you see all of that. And that's the stark difference of what we're seeing here.
You can just see there's quite a bit of fire still on the ground.
This system really is increasing those winds. In Camarillo, near where the mountain fire is burning, we got wind speeds up to about 40 miles per hour.
So many embers come flying through.
Everything that's not wet, it's catching fire again.
You're watching your own house burn, and you can't even get back up here to do anything about it.
And tonight, millions are at risk of fire danger with the highest red flag warnings in the Los Angeles area that we've seen here in 4 years. And the good news is firefighters are expecting the wind to ease up overnight. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky is in Camarillo Heights right now. Morgan, I mean, the scene behind you is absolutely devastating. Oh, what's the situation like where you are?
Gadi, devastating, a bit of an understatement here. If there was any silver lining whatsoever, it's that those powerful winds have finally started to die down, but that's little solace to the families who used to call this home home. The front steps leading to ashes and devastation right now. And the most heartbreaking thing of all, Gadi, is when we got to this neighborhood and we started looking on one side of the street, you look across to the other side of the street, and unfortunately, it's the exact same scene. People were inside these homes just a couple days ago until being evacuated yesterday morning, Gadi, and that's a testament to just how powerful this fire was. Flames originally reported around 9 a.m. yesterday, and here we are, barely 24 hours since then, viewing scenes just like this. No reported injuries except for 2 people yesterday, Gadi, and we're told that those are minor injuries, but fire crews have been trying to go back through this very neighborhood, put out hot spots all day long, all while the larger part of the fire still 0% contained with steady water drops all day long. Gadi?
And Morgan, we were hearing rumors throughout this fire that there were some concerns that water was running out for firefighters. Any truth to that?
Yeah, we've looked into that water issue here, and as we kind of make our way through the neighborhood, that's a good point, Gadi, because as we look around behind me, you will see a very clear horizon. We're on top of a hill in this neighborhood, and because there is some topography involved here, firefighters said that they knew coming into this very neighborhood that water could pose an issue whenever all of the trucks hooked up to the tanks at one time, to those hydrants rather. And they said in order to combat the low water pressure, once they started all pulling from the hydrants, they had to started getting a ferry system going with trucks going to lower levels, getting water there from hydrants, then bringing it back up here. They said that it's not an incredibly rare incident, and that's why they had a plan in place whenever that water pressure did start to drop in this area, although they did acknowledge that at least for a short time up high here, they did temporarily lose water, but they still had reinforcements coming throughout the nighttime. And I should add that because the winds were so powerful, Gadi, they weren't able to use those large tanker trucks. They had to rely on helicopters, but they were able to drop water on this fire all night long, doing whatever they could. But unfortunately for the families who will be allowed to come back here, hopefully sooner than later, there will be little, if anything, they can recover here. Gadi?
No, it's so sad. And for those families that are going back in, I mean, some of those red flag warnings are finally expiring here. Do you think officials are going to be lifting any evacuation orders in the foreseeable future here, or at least restoring power to a lot of those areas?
Yeah, the plan is they want to make sure that the worst is over from a wind standpoint, from a fire standpoint, before they turn the power back on in these affected areas or before they let some of the people come back home, Gadi. We did have a chance to speak with one family earlier today to come back and witness the damage left behind. My producer, Jim Cita, spoke to the woman. She had lived in this home, Gadi, for 50 years. She was in her late 70s. She was joined by friends who had lost their homes in prior California wildfires, telling her that it took them about 3 years after losing their home before they could finally get back to normal, rebuild a home. And she heard that number and then was left wondering what she's going to do going forward now. So there, unfortunately, that story, not uncommon in this neighborhood in Ventura County that is suffering from this fire fueled by those powerful Santa Ana winds, Gadi.
Yeah, so heartbreaking. And yet there were no lightning strikes, right? So do we know how this fire might have started?
Yeah, the cause is still under investigation here, Gadi, but we do know that officials say that embers were driven so high and spread so far that absolutely was one of the key causes in how quickly this fire was able to spread from one area to another, making this firefight so incredibly frustrating here. We do know that while the winds have died down right now, hopefully that will last to tomorrow so crews can get a better position on this fire and start to contain it, because 0% containment means really they're at the mercy of this massive complex here, Gadi. More than 20,000 acres. And keep in mind that this is not the only fire burning. We know that just several hours ago in Santa Barbara County, there was another fire reported, Gadi, that had burned 50 acres, already encroaching upon multiple buildings there and caused a high school to evacuate. This is, of course, a seasonal tragedy with the Santa Ana winds that push these flames across the area, but it doesn't make it any easier for anyone.
It sure doesn't. Morgan Chesky, thank you. And joining us now to talk more about these ongoing fires is NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, what are the conditions looking like right now?
Firefighters are finally enjoying what they're seeing, Gadi. It's been a brutal 48 hours with these strong gusty winds, low relative humidity. Now the winds are dying off, so now we should start to see more progress, get those active flames put out. So mostly been focusing here on the mountain fire. This is the one that just took off yesterday. You know, now we're up to almost 20,000 acres with this fire. And today the active portion of the fire has been in the northeast quadrant here of the fire, and that's been burning towards the Santa Clara River. This is a pretty rural area, so that's why we haven't had a lot of issues with new evacuations and homes. All of these areas, this is where we were yesterday when the fire was racing to the west. That's where we had the homes that went up. And of course, Camarillo, dangerously close. The whole northern portion of the city was evacuated when these were active flames. So it's still zero containment, but that number should dramatically go up. So as we go throughout the rest of today, not as windy, especially as we hit through the overnight. And look at these latest wind gusts. This isn't earlier today. It was like 40 to 50. Now we're at 13, 24 in Oxnard. Van Nuys is about 28, so it's still a little gusty in some of the mountainous areas. But, Gadi, this is a lot better than what we were seeing.
Yeah, thank goodness. And we're not just seeing fires here on the West Coast, right?
Yeah, we've had brush fire problems almost, nationwide. We've had a couple big ones. One was north of Boston. In New Jersey, we've had at least 2 big fires that have been going on. And we can just blame the drought. I mean, right now, everywhere you see colored in on this map is reporting at least some level of drought. Now, we don't have a lot of extreme or exceptional, but moderate to severe is kind of widespread. The Northeast, all through the middle of the country, Colorado, West Texas. And if you add it all up, 87% of the lower 48's in drought. That's a record since we've been keeping drought statistics. And we have at least a portion of drought in 49 of 50 states. So it's no surprise that another windy day is on tap tomorrow for the Northeast. And already 50 million people are in what we call red flag warnings. The leaves are down. It hasn't rained in some areas in nearly 40 to 50 days. So if any fires do form in the windy conditions tomorrow, Gadi, the Northeast, this is the spot where the firefighters are going to be nervous.
Yeah, fire danger in the east, fire danger here in the west. Yes. Meanwhile, what's going on with Hurricane Rafael? We know it hit Cuba yesterday, right? Do we know where it's going next?
Yeah, this is so unusual because if any other time of year, if I'm like, we have a Category 2 hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, everyone's like, uh-oh, like that's horrible trouble. Like, anytime we have a hurricane in the Gulf, usually has to hit someone. This is an extremely rare case where this storm, which looks very impressive this season. I mean, look at the eye on this thing. Like, and it's not that far away. Here's Florida here. There's where Cuba is. And, New Orleans to the north. Normally, we'd be like, wow, where's this going? Where's evacuations going to happen? It just so happens with this storm, it's just going to head west. It's going to slow down. It's going to run into dry air and winds that are going to tear it apart, and then it's just going to kind of drift out here. So it doesn't look like it's going to hit anyone. I mean, I've never had a storm like this do something like this, and it's mostly because of the time of year. Some of our computer models do get a little squirrely, and some do head up towards Louisiana. But if it did, it would be like at 30 to 40 mile per hour winds, Gadi. So not a big concern. Rafael is hopefully the last storm we'll be tracking this season, and it's not going to harm anyone in the U.S.
Yeah, thank goodness. Bill Cairns, thank you. And President-elect Donald Trump weighing in on mass deportations today in a phone call with Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker. When asked about the cost for his border plan and to carry out deportations, Mr. Trump said, quote, "It's not a question of a price tag. It's not really. We have no choice. When people have killed and murdered, when drug lords have destroyed countries, and now they're going to go back to those countries because they're not staying here. It's not quite. There is no price tag," end quote. Meanwhile, officials in the current Biden administration are bracing for the possibility of a new surge in crossings. NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley reports.
Tonight, the Biden administration quietly making preparations in case of a surge of border crossings, one they're predicting might come as more immigrants may scramble to get into the United States before President-elect Trump takes office. NBC News learning Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas met this week with the leaders of ICE and Customs and Border Protection to be sure they are ready, though DHS officials say they have not yet seen an uptick.
We're going to have to seal up those borders, and we're going to have to let people come into our country. We want people to come back in, but we have to let them come back in, but they have to come in legally.
Years of Trump's tough rhetoric on border security and harsh policies, like family separation and remain in Mexico, have migrants on their way to the U.S. thinking their window to enter may soon be closing. We spoke to Gustavo Banda, who operates a migrant shelter in Tijuana, where migrants wait before crossing. He said most of the 1,400 migrants in his shelter now are waiting to enter legally through the Biden administration's CBP One app. But many are worried Trump may take away that chance.
Entonces los coyotes se están aprovechando.
Coyotes, another word for smugglers, are pressuring migrants to cross, he said.
What are coyotes telling immigrants to do right now?
Los coyotes están diciéndole a la gente.
The coyotes are telling people that they need to go at this moment before Trump is in power. We saw that a big caravan is leaving Chiapas with the goal of crossing before Donald Trump comes to power, he says. Meanwhile, on WhatsApp, migrants are talking to coyotes and with each other about what Trump's win means for their chances of entering the United States. After the 21 of January, he'll close the borders with extreme security, one migrant said in Spanish. Is it true that CBP One will end? I don't believe it, another says. While threatening to end legal pathways like CBP One, Trump is touting ways to crack down on anyone attempting to cross illegally.
I will immediately ask Congress for funding to hire 10,000 new border agents and to approve a 10% raise for existing agents and a $10,000 retention and signing bonus. We're doing it.
There is also uncertainty for migrants living in the country, as Trump has also vowed to target millions of undocumented immigrants for deportation. Greg Chin of the American Immigration Lawyers Association said his attorneys are already getting calls from worried clients.
Is going to cause fear and anxiety throughout the immigrant community, including people who are both undocumented and people who do have legal options or legal status already.
Julia Ainsley, NBC News.
Julia, thank you. And for those paying attention during Trump's first administration, staffers in his former Trump White House, they became household names. Steve Bannon, Kellyanne Conway, Hope Hicks, to name a few. So who's going to land in the inner circle in the Trump White House 2.0? Well, we already know this. This woman right here, Susie Wiles, the co-manager of Trump's winning campaign, will be the White House chief of staff, the first woman to ever hold that job. But who else? NBC's Hallie Jackson has that story.
Transition talks tonight ramping up with President-elect Trump's first meeting with his team on who will help execute his agenda, according to a senior official, including Secretary of State. Under consideration, according to multiple sources, former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien and Florida Senator Marco Rubio, signaling he'd follow through with Mr. Trump's pledge to quickly end the war in Ukraine. Despite critics' concerns, that could embolden Russia to seize more territory.
At the end of the day, what we are funding here is a stalemate war.
Also in the mix, former ambassador to Germany Rick Grinnell, controversial and combative.
If you want to avoid war, you better have a son of a bitch as the Secretary of State.
Mr. Trump's first term saw more turnover than any administration in decades. 20-plus cabinet-level positions changing hands. At the Pentagon, Mr. Trump may tap Congressman Mike Waltz or former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to lead the Defense Department, where the expectation, as one Trump ally put it, is a purge across the board. Military officials replaced with generals Mr. Trump believes would be more aligned with his goals.
I believe his policies are good for the United States, good for our national security, and good for maintaining America's leadership around the world.
Former Trump officials Mark Pauletta or Matt Whitaker could take on the job of Attorney General to dissolve any remaining federal prosecutions of Mr. Trump, defend controversial Trump policies like on immigration from likely court challenges, and serve as the leading edge for any push to investigate the president-elect's political enemies, as Mr. Trump has suggested, like the Biden family.
When I get back in office, I will appoint a real special prosecutor to investigate every detail of the Biden crime family of corruption.
But one position that seems safe at the moment, chair of the Federal Reserve, with Jerome Powell serving out a second four-year term, saying today Mr. Trump is not legally permitted to fire him. As for the rest of Mr. Trump's inner circle, it is likely to include some former rivals like Doug Burgum and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who tells NBC News, by the way, that he is staying in the Palm Beach area for the next couple of months, close to the transition action. Gadi?
Interesting. Hallie Jackson, thank you. And this election has already told us who will occupy the White House and who's going to control the Senate. But the question of who's going to control the House is still hanging in the balance with 33 races yet to be called. And let's bring in NBC's Sahil Kapoor to tell us more. Sahil, it seems like President-elect Trump and the Republican Party, they think they've got the House in the bag as well. Could all this leave Democrats with no possibility of stopping things like confirmations?
Well, it's certainly possible, Gadi, that Republicans will have the trifecta. They've certainly got the presidency with Donald Trump headed back for another 4 years. They've clinched control of the Senate with at least 52 seats. But the House is still a nail-biter. Right now, Republicans appear to be in the driver's seat. We can project that House Republicans will have at least 210 seats in the House. There are about 32 races that are too close to call. And of those races, they need to win 8 to secure a majority. So Republicans may well win the House of Representatives, but best case scenario, they're going to have a very narrow majority to work with in terms of advancing President Trump's legislative agenda. And I cannot overstate, if Democrats somehow pull off a miracle and claim control of the House of Representatives, how difficult it will be for Donald Trump, how different it will be, rather, for him when dealing on one hand with a Republican speaker like Mike Johnson, who is expected to be a strong ally, advance his agenda, or a Democratic speaker who would be Hakeem Jeffries, who would be a staunch adversary, who would use control of the House floor as well as subpoena power in the committees to investigate the Trump administration.
And Sahil, the Senate, we know that the Republicans have the majority there, like you just said. So many of them falling directly in line behind the president-elect. Any ideas on some of the first things that we're going to start seeing with committees here?
Yeah, minimum 52 seats for Republicans in the Senate. The state of play is that there are several more races, 3 of them that are too close to call. One of them is Pennsylvania, where the Republican challenger, Dave McCormick, is a little bit ahead of the Democratic incumbent, Bob Casey. But there's still a lot of vote in Philadelphia yet to be counted, which is one of the reasons we're not calling that. Depending on how many votes there are in Philly and how that breaks, there still could be a late surprise here. McCormick is declaring victory here, but NBC News has not called that race. There's also Arizona and Nevada, where Democrats are leading. It appear well positioned at this point, but those races are still not called by NBC News. Now, in terms of the agenda for Republicans in the Senate, one thing they're certainly going to have the power to do is confirm President Trump's cabinet, his personnel nominees, as well as his judicial nominees without any need for Democratic votes. Remember, these are on a 51 vote threshold, so they can confirm judges, potential Supreme Court vacancies that they're already thinking about with a couple of conservative justices getting up there in age. They can do that without any ability for Democrats to stop them.
Sahil Kapoor, thank you. And any minute now, the election results from Nevada could start coming in. Right now, NBC News is still reporting both the presidential race there and the Senate race are still too close to call. Currently, Trump leads Harris by about 50,000 votes with 95% of the votes in. And on the Senate side, the incumbent Democrat Jackie Rosen leads her Republican challenger Sam Brown by about 12,000 votes with 94% of the votes in. Nevada Senator, Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen, who won her first term in 2018 and defeated her then GOP Senator Dean Heller by 5 points, is running against Army veteran Sam Brown. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent David Noriega from Las Vegas. David, way more than 90% of the ballots are counted, but still no solid answers here. Like, what do we know for sure right now?
Yeah, so the reason this is happening, Gadi, is because by state law, Nevada has to continue counting mail-in votes that were postmarked by Election Day but received after Election Day until Saturday. So there are still votes coming in. On top of that, when we spoke to the Secretary of State earlier this week, he told us that there were about 14,000 ballots statewide that had signature issues. The state alerted those people that there were issues with their ballot, and they now have until Tuesday to cure those ballots, meaning address whatever issue there is with the signature and resubmit it. So we are still waiting for those numbers. That said, there was a big batch of votes from Clark County, here where I am, which corresponds roughly to the Las Vegas metro area, last night that clarified some of these margins. It was largely thanks to those votes that incumbent Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen's margin became a little bit more comfortable over Sam Brown, that 12,000 that you mentioned. But statewide, Trump, as you pointed out, still has, again, a fairly comfortable margin of about 50,000 votes. But we are waiting for more of those mail-in ballots to come in before we call the race for sure. Gadi?
David, what do you think the big story emerging out of Nevada is this year?
Yeah, Gadi, I think the big story is what is visible here in Clark County, which again is basically Vegas. This is by far the largest population in the state. And just for context, in each of the last several election cycles, the Democrats carried Nevada. If Donald Trump wins Nevada, it will be the first time he wins it. And the Democrats carried Nevada because they carried Clark County. The electorate in Clark County is disproportionately young, working class, racially diverse. About a quarter of the electorate is Latino. And it was that demographic that the Democrats were able to turn out substantially in their favor with legendary, ground turnout machines like the Culinary Union, the Harry Reid machine. In fact, Democrats won Clark County by between 10 and 15 points in the last elections. Right now, again, not all the votes are counted, but we're looking at a very, very narrow Kamala Harris lead over Donald Trump in Clark County. Right now, it's, I think, at about 2%. That is basically eliminating that comfortable margin that the Democrats had in past elections. That is precisely because, again, the demographics of this electorate, Latino voters, young working class voters, those are the voters that Trump managed to bring into his coalition, pretty much reshaping the electoral map, not just across the United States, but very much here in Clark County. Gadi?
David Noriega out there in Vegas for us. David, thank you. And the Federal Reserve announced it is cutting interest rates by 1/4 point today. This is the second rate cut by the central bank since September, and that's in an effort to help fight inflation. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans has more on this decision and the future of the Fed under President-elect Donald Trump.
Hey, Gadi, the Federal Reserve cut its key benchmark interest rate 1/4 point, and the Fed chief Jay Powell said the U.S. economy is strong. He called its resilience remarkable. The Fed chief noting progress on inflation, now close to the Fed's 2% target. It's a dramatic improvement from the peak above 9% in 2022 after COVID snarled supply chains and Russia invaded Ukraine. The Fed chief's rosy view is at odds with American voters, though, who showed, that this was an election about frustration with high prices. 68% of voters with a dim view of the economy, and not just eggs and gas, but big-ticket items like housing. By one measure, 38% of voters said housing prices were a factor in their vote. And today, Powell was pressed on what the return of Donald Trump to the White House might mean for him and Fed policy. Trump's allies have called for Powell to resign. And Trump has said he'd like to influence decisions on interest rates. Powell today saying by law the president cannot remove him.
Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. Some of the president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
Can you follow up on, do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
No.
I guess the other question is, to follow up on Victoria's question, do you believe that the president has the power to fire or demote you, and has the Fed determined the legality of a president demoting at will any of the other governors with leadership positions?
Not permitted under the law.
Not what?
Not permitted under the law.
Now, many economists concerned that the tariffs Trump has said he wants, 10% on all imports, 60% on goods from China, that could reignite inflation and swell the deficit. Indeed, where inflation goes next, it might just depend on the policies of the incoming administration. Gadi?
Christine Romans, thank you. And some breaking news out of Wisconsin tonight. Police stopped a potential school shooting in Kenosha today, with officials saying they narrowly missed a tragedy there. It all happened here at the Roosevelt Elementary School when this 13-year-old tried to enter the school with a black duffel bag, which police say they think had the gun inside. School faculty confronted him, at which point he fled the scene, but he was later arrested. Further investigation has now revealed a lot of red flags, including a troubling online history and video that police received with him appearing to hold a rifle there. The investigation is still ongoing, and we're going to bring you the latest as we have it. And don't go anywhere. We are just getting started. Up next, phones across the country flooded with racist text messages, a common theme and the fears being stoked. Who could be behind them? Later, on a mission, we're going to introduce you to a man biking across America, and we're going to tell you what's driving his quest in tonight's Best of Us. Plus, dozens of monkeys escaped from a research facility, and they're now on the loose in South Carolina. Police telling people to lock their doors and windows. Hey, welcome back, and here's some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. Police in New York City are searching for a suspect who is accused of shooting a man this morning. Now, the suspect escaped into the subway system, creating an absolute mess for commuters. But the shooting victim is expected to be okay. And Rudy Giuliani is refusing to give up his assets. The former New York City mayor was in federal court today. He's supposed to turn over his valuables after he defamed Georgia election workers who won a multi-million-dollar suit against him. Back in 2020, Giuliani wrongly accused the two of tampering with ballots. And the jury is now deliberating in the Delphi murders trial. Richard Allen was charged in the 2017 killings of two teenage girls there. The jury got the case this afternoon, and if convicted on all the charges, Allen could be sentenced to 130 years in prison. The 5 people were killed in an Arizona plane crash near Phoenix earlier this week. Officials say the small business jet crashed through an airport fence, colliding with a car that was driving by, and the plane aborted takeoff, but it still wasn't clear why. 4 of the 5 people died on board, along with the driver of the car. And in South Carolina, the hunt is on for over 40 monkeys. They all escaped from some sort of research facility, and police say the people there should call them right away if they spot them. Those primates, they got out last night, and apparently when one of their caretakers left an enclosure door open, that's when the escape happened. The facility calls it human error, and they're trying to get all those monkeys back as we speak. And the FBI is investigating a series of racist text messages sent to black Americans across the country. The text messages, just like this one, telling people to get their tools sharpened and to get ready to go to a plantation. Some of the victims think these messages are somehow tied to the election. Now, the source of these messages and how exactly they got these numbers is still unknown. But NBC News Now anchor Zincle Esamoah has the latest.
Corinne Freeman was at home with her kids on Wednesday when she got a text from a number she didn't recognize.
It was this odd, ominous feeling text message basically saying, hello, you've been selected to be a slave on a plantation, and you're scheduled to get picked up at 12 a.m. on November 13th.
How did it feel when you got that text message?
Well, I was immediately disturbed.
And she's not alone. Social media sites have been flooded with people from New York to Florida who say they've gotten these racist messages. Freeman and others believe the texts may have been sparked by the current political climate.
I think that this is intentional to scare people of color, Black people, into a reality that we don't want to go back to.
The wording of the texts appear to differ. Some have misspellings, others address individuals by name. But the theme is consistent, telling recipients they've been selected to pick cotton. All of the people NBC News spoke to who got these messages are Black. Several universities confirmed their students have reported receiving the texts. Clemson says they came from numbers associated with online spoofing sites. It remains unclear who is behind the messages, but tonight, Text Now, which offers free phone numbers online, tells NBC News at least one of its accounts may be involved, writing in a statement in part, "We do not tolerate or condone the use of our service to send harassing or spam messages," adding they shut down the accounts and are working with authorities. For recipients like Corinne Freeman, the digital hate is fueling her real-world concerns.
I am overwhelmed with anxiety and fear about how I'm going to help my children make sense of the world that they have to navigate as Black children.
Zinclair Samoa, NBC News.
Zinclair, thank you. Meanwhile, there was a hearing today for the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students, Brian Kohberger, and his defense team. They are now trying to remove the possibility of execution if he is found guilty. And the defense team says that the death penalty would be, quote, dehumanizing. They argue that the state of Idaho has no real means of executing an inmate, and the methods, which include lethal injection or a firing squad, are unconstitutional. The judge said he will issue a written ruling at a later date. Let's bring in criminal defense attorney Allison Treasel to talk a little bit more about this case. Allison, can you walk us through the defense's case here? Why are they saying the death penalty should be taken completely off the table here?
Right, and they came at it really hard today. They filed about 13 motions about it, saying that it is not only cruel and unusual, that Idaho has no real means or plan on how they're going to carry out the death penalty. They're saying that there are not enough drugs for lethal injection, and that the firing squad method, which was just signed into law, by the way, last year, would constitute cruel and unusual punishment. And so their position is this case is not a death penalty case. And I want to give just a little bit of background on the death penalty in Idaho, because in Idaho, the death penalty was actually established in 1864, before Idaho established its statehood. And there's only been 29 executions that have actually been carried out in that state, as opposed to a state like Texas, where there's been 1,300. Most of them have been by lethal injection. It is true there is a shortage of companies that will give lethal injection medication. But here in Idaho, there is a law that was just passed that they're saying, yes, we will agree to a firing squad. His defense team is saying that is cruel and unusual, that him not knowing how he's going to die, and that he waiting on death row to learn what his fate might be is too much anxiety. And the judge said, no, that's not a reason.
We also saw the judge deny the experts' testimony, the defense experts' testimony about the constitutionality of all of this.
Right.
What does that tell us about where
the judge said that's not relevant here. That's not relevant. I'm here to talk about the law. I don't want to hear about opinions. Opinions don't matter. It's all about the law in this case. And the law is the law here that this is not cruel and unusual. And are the factors here enough to warrant the death penalty? In cases like this, you only need one factor in aggregation and to give the death penalty. And here, you're thinking about multiple victims. You're thinking about the heinous nature of this act. And is this the type of person who would be reformed, or is he a danger to the community? And most people would argue that he meets all of those. The defense attorney is pushing back very hard. I do not think at this level, this judge will rule against the death penalty. I think that the defense team will have to take it up on appeal, and that's where it will eventually go. But this case is headed to trial, and it's not headed to trial, Gadi, until next year, next August.
Next August. I mean, it's such a long timeline. Yeah. I remember being there while they were still searching for the killer, and those families are still in this limbo. Yeah. So next August is the first bat at this, basically. Right. And it could be even further down the road.
Right. I mean, if in fact these matters of the death penalty go up on appeal, it's who knows how far they will go and how long that will take. But this trial is expected to last through November of next year. And these families, the judge did, and I believe correctly, move the venue to Boise. Masco's too small of a town. Everybody knew about it. It really wouldn't have been able to get, he wouldn't have been able to get a fair trial. But these families then have to travel to Boise for months to seek justice for their children.
Yeah, that's such a long time to wait. Allison Treasel, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And coming up, why the cold medication you probably have in your home right now might be pulled from store shelves. The ingredient the FDA is starting to raise red flags about. But first, you got to see this. There was an unexpected masked passenger trying to board a Spirit Airlines flight at LaGuardia, of course, LaGuardia Airport, earlier this week. A raccoon inside the airport, skipping security, popping out of a ceiling tile, descending from a loose electrical cord. Then the raccoon fell, causing passengers in Terminal A to run in panic. The Port Authority, they've caught him, safely removed that raccoon, but airport staff is still trying to figure out how it got there. Clearly, he was just trying to make his flight. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. Here's an easy question. What do you do when you're all sick and stuffy? Well, chances are you probably go out and grab one of these nasal decongestants, right? Tylenol, Sudafed, Mucinex. Well, today, the FDA proposed removing some of these guys from the shelves because of an active ingredient called phenephrine. Now, the FDA says when orally taken, the pills are not just that effective. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us now. Dr. Kavita, I have so many questions about this. What do you mean this stuff does not work? Because this is like the go-to stuff. What are we talking about here?
Gadi, you're not alone. So it's important to clarify that phenylephrine is not dangerous. I think a lot of people were kind of freaking out. The real issue is its effectiveness. Gadi, to put it mildly, it's no better than just sniffing a little bit of water up your nose to help with decongestant. So it's really not useful. It's really not useful to have oral phenylephrine on the shelves or in some of these other decongestants. And the safety profile was really not a concern on the FDA side. It just doesn't provide the intended benefit. People like you and me buy it because we're congested. It doesn't do anything.
Not only do we buy it, I literally spent $60 loading up a bunch of that stuff. And I was like, oh, do I do the generic one or do I do the name brand stuff? I don't know. I wish I would have seen that before last week. So how soon might these drugs come off the shelves? And once they do, are drug makers going to reformulate? Are they going to refund me my $60? What's going to happen here?
I wish. I really wish that were the case. Unfortunately, probably not. The timeline for removal is not immediate. So what the FDA did is they agreed with the advisory committee. They issued a final decision. There's actually a 180-day comment period. So there's time for everybody to put in comments to see if that could potentially reverse the FDA's decision. Likely not, Gadi, because this process has been going on for a while. But that gets us to about May 7th, and then they'll basically say, no, we're sticking with our final decision. And then in terms of reformulation, many of the drug manufacturers we expect will not only, obviously they have to remove it, but they'll probably retool and kind of change the way they describe the medicine to make note that it's still a decongestant.
And doctor, I don't know if you can notice, but I am still a little stuffy. And now I know why. It's been like a week here. So what do I do? Are there medicines out there, remedies that really work? Don't say neti pot. Please don't say neti pot.
There are, yes. I'm glad you said the neti pot. So nasal irrigation actually does work, especially if you can do it with saline or warm water. And then there are actual nasal saline sprays. I'm not kidding when I say you might as well spray kind of water. Saline has a little bit of salt in it, so it kind of helps with that mucosal inflammation. And then you should always check with the doctor for anything. But an oral over-the-counter like an anti-allergy medicine, can actually help for that congestion in general. So, Gadi, we've got choices. They just won't have the words phenylephrine in them.
Yeah, and they're going to taste a lot less tasty than that little cherry shot that you take. I guess neti pot is in the future. Dr. Kavita Patel with the news you can use tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. And still ahead, we are talking about what's happening in the Middle East. Right now, Israel's onslaught against Beirut. Our Danielle Hamamdjian joins us with what her and her team felt during this attack. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. 3 people have been charged in connection with Liam Payne's death, the former One Direction singer who died last month. And Argentina's public prosecutor made that announcement earlier today, saying that they have been charged with the, quote, crimes of abandonment and for supply and facilitation of narcotics. Payne died last month when he fell from the balcony of a Buenos Aires hotel, and his body was flown back to the UK yesterday. And today, an American has been arrested in Germany on suspicion of spying for China. German prosecutors say the man, who is only being identified right now as Martin D., worked for the U.S. Armed Forces, and according to their investigation, he allegedly offered sensitive military information to Chinese intelligence. Local reports say he was not able to transfer any data before his arrest. And Australia is planning to ban social media for anyone under 16, putting the responsibility on companies, not on parents. The Prime Minister says the new law aims to protect children, with platforms like Instagram and TikTok given a year to implement age verification systems. The legislation is expected to be introduced in Parliament later this month. And we stay down under, where Australian breakdancer Rachel Raygun Gunn says she is officially retiring from competition. She's the one who stunned everyone at the Olympics with her breakdancing moves. Raygun says she now only dances at home with her partner, and after all the Olympic hate, she's over competing. And over in the Middle East, Israel intensified attacks on Lebanon overnight, hitting Beirut's southern suburbs, and the country's health ministry there says that the strikes have killed at least 40 people. All this as the IDF has also continued military operations in Gaza, now expanding into the northern part of the Strip. And NBC's Danielle Hamamdjian has more from Beirut.
Well, good evening from Beirut, where last night we saw, felt and heard some of the biggest Israeli airstrikes to hit the southern suburbs of Beirut that happened right behind me across that bay. In fact, the airstrikes were so intense, so powerful that vibrations could be felt. Vibrations from the explosions could be felt all the way here inside our hotel, making the windows shake. Reports also of damage in the halls of the airport in Beirut. That's because of an airstrike hitting close to one of the runways. Health officials here in Lebanon say that more than 50 people were killed overnight, most of them killed in the Bekaa Valley, that is in eastern Lebanon, a Hezbollah stronghold. More than 3,100 people have now been killed by Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon over the past year. Again, the vast majority of them killed just in the past 6 weeks. Over to Gaza now, where the IDF is expanding its military operations in the northern part of the Strip. And the IDF today having to walk back a comment made by a brigadier general who said that Palestinians would not be able to return home. You can imagine the outrage when that comment started to circulate. Today, the IDF clarifying that those comments were taken out of context, but NBC spoke to a director of an NGO who confirmed that for weeks now, Israel has not allowed any food to enter the northern Gaza. And he believes, and so many believe, that that is to force people to move south. All this happening as Israel is bracing for a retaliatory strike by Iran following Israel's attack last month in Iran.
Danielle Hamamdjian, thank you. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything. We're talking winning big on election night. And we're not talking about the Republican Party. We are talking about people that were actually betting on the presidential race and how it generated major interest. What could be the future of elections is coming up. Plus, we are going for a ride with the person biking across America. Why this man from Shanghai, China, is spending months crisscrossing the states, and what he's learning about all of us along the way. That's coming up in tonight's Best of Us.
When I'm young, I read Old Man and the Sea.
Old Man and the Sea. Oh,
yeah.
Wait, that was one of your inspirations for this.
Yeah, and the spirit strong man. Hemingway is spirit strong man. Me, I want to become spirit strong man. So I do this.
And in tonight's Future of Everything, as weird as this is to say about an election, this Tuesday, countless Americans hit the literal jackpot after placing bets on who's going to be going to the White House, and they were able to do it, and they were able to watch the betting odds in real time on their phone. That is a very, very new political phenomenon, and sites like Polymarket and even the Robinhood app legally allowing people to bet on Donald Trump. And it wasn't just in the United States. In fact, one French bettor put around $30 million on Trump to win. That person ended up winning almost $50 million. And who better to talk about all of this than with our own Brian Chung? Brian, let's start at the beginning here. Why is this all of a sudden a new thing? I guess in the past, a couple of friends could bet each other who's going to win. No one would ever know about it. Maybe some 20s get exchanged. But how did this become legalized betting? How are we seeing betting markets? And isn't all of this somewhat in court still?
Yeah, well, so legally, you couldn't do this. You could not bet on Trump versus Biden in 2020. You could not bet on Clinton versus Trump in 2016. This is really the first one in the modern era where you were allowed to legally bet in the United States because of a court ruling just weeks before the election between the CFTC, the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, and Kalshi, which is one of the apps that allows these bets to happen. They basically took it to court, and a court said, look, while we review this case, we're going to allow Kalshi and other companies to offer these election contracts where you could bet on Trump versus Harris. So we have to remember this is not entirely unprecedented. Actually, in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, it was pretty prevalent to be betting on the election. In fact, in some cases, they even printed the lines in the newspaper. This is some cool history that even I didn't know prior to reporting on all of this, but it was basically banned for most of the 1900s into the 2000s with a law that said the CFTC wouldn't be allowed to offer any sort of gambling contracts for things that aren't of the public interest. They interpreted that to include these election contracts. But again, it opened the floodgates right before 2024, and a lot of people who bet on Trump, they won big.
Yeah, that is quite the history lesson. One thing they didn't have way back in the day, though, huge super PACs, right? So let's just play this out. I know that this is in limbo right now, but what's stopping PACs or other political groups from putting massive amounts of money into these betting sites and possibly ballooning the bets, swinging the betting odds, which a lot of people are using as polls? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, and by the way, they're not polls, right? So if you're up 60-40 in the election betting markets, that means that it's 60% implied pricing that that person is going to win, not that they have a 20-point lead among voters, right? That's a key important distinction. But look, to your question about the PACs, they could put money in this. And it's not just PACs, right? Think about billionaires like Elon Musk potentially. And if you put in millions of dollars, billions of dollars into these markets, could that tilt the scale? Well, yes, it would. Now, that's not necessarily illegal. If you buy a bunch of stock, well, the stock price is probably going to go up as well. But if you talk about the signaling issue of people interpreting those betting odds as the same as polls, if they mix them up, well, that could really create a huge issue. But it's not even just at the super PAC level. Experts were telling me that even at the individual level, there's a conflict of interest. It's not like betting on a sports game where you or I have no control over whether or not the Jets beat the Steelers. But in an election, if you bet on someone, you do have a vote. Take a listen to one expert and professor of economics at Barnard told me about that.
In the election game, if you want to call it that, we are all on the field. The voters are all on the field. It's analogous to sports betting if the competitors themselves were betting on the game. And there are problems with that potentially.
Big problems with that, as you could imagine, right? And the people who might be billionaires who are also betting in these markets and perhaps thumbing the scales could be the same people donating to those campaigns or supporting those candidates. So this is a real Pandora's box that has been opened up, Gadi.
We are all on the field. That is like a perfect analogy there. Brian Chung, thank you. And finally tonight, there are a lot of things dividing the country right now. And sometimes in all of that, you come across someone special, like a special kind of human that just puts everything instantly into perspective. And here's a look at one of the best of us in a strange land, proving that kindness can lead you anywhere.
On the wide open roads of America, an experiment in humanity for Yi Fei Shu. Far from his Shanghai, China home, he's been cycling across the U.S. for more than 4 months, enduring rain, rugged terrain, and uncertainty in a foreign land.
What's been the hardest part, the hardest stretch so far?
Wyoming.
Wyoming, yep.
Nobody. All the road, nobody.
Yes, all road and no people, huh?
And no people.
What has been the most beautiful thing you've seen so far?
Oh, of course, Yellowstone, of course, of course.
Oh, Yellowstone, huh?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's not here for the sights, more philosopher than cycling tourist, and he set out to prove a universal truth.
You believe in the good of humanity.
Yeah, I want to show that human nature is good.
And for him, the truest test comes down to how a country responds to a hungry stranger just passing through.
So this is what you hold in front of people's houses when you approach them, right?
Yeah. Knock a door. I say, hello, I'm a cyclist, come from China. Can you help me? Offer me some food to eat. I'm too hungry.
And it's that smile, too. That's the smile that opens the door.
I'm sunshine.
Sunshine, yeah, sunshine. Your smile is like sunshine. I mean, yeah, I see how you can get around the world very easily with your smile.
His biggest rule of the road is the most difficult. No money, only goodwill.
You help me a lot.
And if you think there's no way he can make it across the U.S. without spending a cent,
I can't use money. Thank you.
Then you don't know the Americans he's finding day after day.
Well, thank you.
Along the back roads of the United States, America showing its true colors.
You can see if I can find you some more food.
What are some of the things that you've learned about America?
To be honest, before I came here, I had a different, and you could even say slightly negative perception of America. But so many people here have offered to help me without expecting anything in return, and it's really touched me.
A two-way street of kindness felt by those who have crossed his path.
I feel like I got more out of it than he did. I gave him a meal. He gave me a huge lesson and just the generosity that he's experienced throughout this trip.
I brought a bike. Is it okay if I ride with you for a little bit?
Of course.
All right.
We caught up with Yifei along his journey to try to understand what inspires him.
Hemingway.
Ernest Hemingway inspired some of this.
Yeah. When I'm young, I read Old Man and the Sea.
Old Man and the Sea. Oh,
yeah.
Wait, that was one of your inspirations for this.
Yeah, and the spirit strong man. Hemingway is spirit strong man. Me, I want to become spirit strong man. So I do this.
So far, that spirit has propelled him across Russia, England, and France. And at the end of this journey, Yifei hopes to bike around Australia and Japan and eventually around the world, proving that kindness truly has no bounds. But on this day, under the blue sky,
this is freedom.
This is freedom.
Yeah.
A feeling cherished on a journey fueled by generosity from sea to shining sea.
How's that for a reflection of who we really are? That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. We'll see you here tomorrow, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.